Hi guys, today I'm going to talk about and react to Kramer versus Kramer, classica from 1979.
I'm leaving you. Honey, please, I can't hear. What?
So this is the moment where she sees he's busy and she is telling him, I'm leaving you. Basically, she was stuffing up all her emotions, and now at the most inappropriate point, it seems, she's telling him that. In marriages, to save marriage, I would suggest to do couple counseling. And it seems that they're 8 years married, 2 years happy, and they should have started right away. It appears also that she could have had postpartum depression, because she said she was having a baby a year after she got married and was happy for the first 2 years. So it is very, very important to notice when things go sideways to contact health professionals, couple therapy, therapists.
I've taken $2,000 out of our savings account because that's what I had in the bank when we first got married.
All right. They both have fiduciary duty to use the money for living expenses and give each other a heads up when they invest things. But taking out of joint account $2,500 that she brought into the marriage 8 years ago, she didn't have to do it. She could have talked to him and have taken half of the money before even filing for divorce, because arguably half of the money are community property. And that way it helps in many ways. Number one, it helps avoid post-separation accounting, because if she, let's say, didn't take $2,500 and she just used joint account for her personal expenses and he didn't pay her spousal support, then we would have had to calculate how much did she use community for her separate purposes. Remember, date of marriage, date of separation is the time frame when both parties accumulate community property. So whatever she brought in before marriage, she needs to trace it back and to show that she had it, and banks usually don't keep records more than 7 years. So technically, unless he agrees that that's what she brought into the marriage and didn't spend it on joint living expenses, that's something she would be entitled in a divorce proceeding as her separate property money. So it seems, from her perspective, she did something that she thought is fair, but technically she would be entitled to half of the money and probably couldn't trace her $2,500 unless he agreed.
Here's the cleaning, here's the laundry ticket. You can pick them both up on Saturday.
She also didn't have to give him her credit card. She could have redirected her credit card to a separate bank account and agreed with him to use that half of the money she pre-distributed from joint account to pay her own expenses with that credit card. And the way she leaves him, it's way too fast. I mean, if she really has thought about it for a long time, I would make a list of everything that needs to be paid months in advance, from what account, which card. I mean, he probably is not going to remember everything she said. And that's where couple therapy could have helped to help the transition, co-parenting. It seems like she's so done that she doesn't even think about it.
Well, I'm sorry that I was late, but I was busy making a living, all right? Come on, okay?
He's not taking her seriously. He's like, I'm sorry, I was too busy. I was late. I was too busy making living. Okay, like sit down and listen what I'm saying. So perhaps that was the dynamic of that relationship. He's making money, she's doing the household, but she wanted much more out of this.
Stop that.
That's everything.
Hey, enough, all right? What are you doing? Where are you going? Come on, just tell me what I did. That's all. Just tell me what I did. That's all.
Just tell me what I did. Either he's ignorant, in denial, or she literally never told him what's wrong in their marriage. And I think it's usually a combination of everything, or she indicates she doesn't sit down, she doesn't want to do couple therapy, or he doesn't, and they just 5 years, 7 years into this, and it's so far beyond repairable and reconcilable, seems to me.
Then what is it?
Me, my fault. You just married the wrong person, that's all. I can't,
Fine. Let's just go inside,
I
please.
can't, I tried. I swear.
Joanne, please, no, just, I'm sorry.
No, don't make me go in there, please. Please don't make me go in there. Don't make me go in there.
We'll just
If
talk.
you do, I swear, one day, next week, maybe next year, I don't know. I'll go right out the window.
So she's confessing that she is suicidal. And that's really, really bad news because she drove herself in this position without any help. And they have a 7-year-old child who has been exposed to this sadness and dysfunction, which is very sad.
Oh, please, now, come on now. What about Billy?
I'm not taking him with me. I'm no good for him. I'm terrible with him. I have no patience.
Now, when she says she's not taking him, I'm not taking him with me, she means I'm not taking our son with me because he's better off without me. And this shows her mental state of mind that is very concerning for custody purposes and for visitation and for being a fit parent. And if that's the only way, then he, of course, is left with taking care of their son. She establishes a status quo. By leaving, she is establishing that he is going to be custodial parent with 100% visitation.
He's better off without me.
And if she comes back, and which she does 18 months later, then it is called for psychological evaluation, her ability to parent, because such a drastic move to leave a child unprepared with him. He doesn't know how to. I mean, he has to learn how to do breakfast, how to parent. He was obviously, seems like she's leaving him for that reason, that he was working too much and didn't spend time parenting.
Joanne, please.
And I don't love you anymore.
Where are you going?
I don't know.
Oh, God. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna tell you. You wanna know where Mommy is?
She's supposed to take me to school.
She told me to do it. It's
Where'd she
okay.
go?
I'll tell you precisely where she went.
So it shows that from the get-go, he didn't set an alarm. He is having a hard time doing what she did before she left.
A bowl of water for Daddy. Have some coffee. And we got how many eggs? 2 for you and 2 to be my #1 helper. Okay, now watch this. One hand. Here we go.
So this is how he's planning to do French toast. We know bread is not going to fit in this cup. So he has a really hard time. And that brings me back to the point of co-parenting, assigning each other during the marriage duties. And even if someone is working full-time, to have them at least understand what it means to be home from time to time, because the parent who is staying home also needs time off and also needs to have mommy time, going somewhere with girlfriends, and the other parent would need to be able to do basic things. And I think that's the core problem in this, one of the core problems in this relationship, where they didn't talk, didn't communicate, and that's #1 reason why a relationship failed.
Did you know that all the best chefs are men? I bet you didn't know that, did you? Isn't this terrific? This is terrific. We got to do this more often.
You got some shell in there.
It's all right. Makes it crunchier that way. You like your French toast crunchy, don't you?
So he's trying hard, but again, that brings the same point that he is pretty lost in the ability to do what she did.
My mommy left, isn't it? Because I was bad.
Japanese thing?
It is very common for children of such age to believe that the marriages fail because of their bad behavior, and it's very unfortunate. And I'm glad he said no and he explained. It's important. I mean, their son is 7, so it could be a good idea to have therapy with him or gently get into this, because he's in despair. He doesn't know what's happening. Mom is gone. He's left with dad, who doesn't know how to do French toast and wake up on time to bring him to school. He thinks it's all his fault, and this is the time where I really appreciate how he explains to his son.
Mom loves you very much, and the reason she left doesn't have anything to do with you.
Period. That's the point. Has nothing to do with you. And disparaging another parent would have been the worst thing that he could have done, because for child development, it's important to have consistent, continuous contact to both parents and be in good regard to both parents, and not have grudges based on what the other parent says. There are sometimes court orders that say do not disparage the other parent in front of the child, or do not let your relatives, friends disparage the other parent in front of the child. It's not enforceable really until the parent who disparages admits that, or we put a child on the stand, which we're not going to do. It's a moral code, and I think that's very important to not disparage.
Well, I've learned that I love my little boy, and that I'm capable of taking care of him.
What do you mean?
I want my son.
You can't have him.
Don't get...
You can't have him. Well, maybe for him, but from a family law perspective, a court would never keep a parent away unless she is a domestic abuser or she's mentally ill, provable, with diagnosis. The fact that she's going to a therapist doesn't suggest that she's mentally ill. Her suicidal attempts, or saying that she's suicidal, is potentially problematic, and that's where perhaps psychological evaluation could be useful. However, if she were to go to court and ask for custody and visitation, she probably would get a step-up schedule. She wouldn't be able to take away the child. Perhaps in 1979 there were other rules, but in nowadays she would have gotten potentially 1 or 2 days a week, or every other weekend, plus a day during the week. She doesn't have the weekend. Something like that, and then step up, leading to 50-50. Certainly not be able to take their child, uproot him from school environment, and take to San Francisco.
It gives you the right to come back here?
I never stopped wanting him.
What makes you so sure he wants you?
What makes you so sure he doesn't want me?
Well, a 7-year-old doesn't get to say what he wants until he turns 14, or until close to that age the judge determines that he's mature enough to state his opinion. So putting it on a child who he wants to be with is inappropriate.
Okay, look, we're going to sit here and bat this back and forth like it was for 8 years. It's like old times.
Well, you can't deny me
Don't
access
tell
to
me
my baby.
what I can...
And that's correct. So now he can, because there is no court order, so she is basically forced to go to the court. And he's making a huge mistake. He's making it a court case. And he could have avoided it by calming down his emotions, by knowing that if she comes back, it means she wants some time, and suggested co-parenting counseling. And he's pissed for many reasons, but in this situation, he could have saved a lot of trouble by actually, at least if he cannot do it in the moment, to say, I will think about it, let's talk at least in a week, spoken to a lawyer, to a therapist, and then probably have come back to her with some proposal or listened to her more. And maybe his behavior is one of the reasons why she left him in the first place.
Or cannot do.
And you see how he points his finger at her. That's disrespectful. Just disrespectful how he treats her right now, regardless how he feels.
Don't talk to me that way.
I've anticipated
Okay, look,
this
I don't
whole
want to
thing.
get into this. Look,
You know, there is a saying, when you point a finger at someone, 3 fingers point at you back.
you're going to have to do what you're going to have to do, and I'm going to have to do what
I'm very sorry about this.
Okay.
And she is sorry. I mean, he should be sorry about his behavior, I think.
Just do what you have to
Definitely not acceptable.
do. I don't know the legal jargon for it, but I would think it's desertion. I mean, I don't mean to tell you your job, Mr. Shaughnessy, but I just think I have an open and shut case.
Well, first, Mr. Kramer, there's no such thing as an open and shut case where custody is involved. Well, I'm willing to bet your ex-wife has already found a lawyer, and he's advised her to move back to New York to establish residency.
And that's correct, because the child has home state in New York, and she needs to move back in order to get more visitation.
Now, the burden is on us to prove that your ex-wife is an unfit mother.
And that's correct. So he would be the one asking for either psychological evaluation or if there is any domestic abuse that he experienced, which I don't think that would be relevant.
And that means that I'll have to play rough. And if I play rough,
It doesn't mean that he has to play rough. So now he's feeding his own client's emotions of, I'm going to get this done, I'm going to win this case. This is his lawyer's chance to say, well, how did it go? Did you talk to her? What did you say? And if his lawyer found out how the conversation went and what she asked, and he would have proposed co-parenting counseling before going to court. Maybe it's too late because she already filed and that's the only thing that's left. However, he still can reach out to her counsel and propose co-parenting counseling and postpone the hearing. That's what I would have done.
you can bet they will too. Can you take that, Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Because once they're in court and they fight, they ruin their relationship and set it back for another couple of years, and it affects their child. The way they feel, court hearings are very stressful, and it affects every single client I have. It affects detrimentally for their health. They end up at hospitals. They don't feel well. And so as much as I can to protect their health that reflects on their child's health, I would. And it seems like this lawyer doesn't care.
And it's going to cost you $15,000.
$15,000. I don't know if he's talking about it's going to cost you the whole case, because it could be possible. A whole case in 1979, $15,000 would be equivalent to, I don't know, 60 right now. And it's possible that this case would cost as much, but I would have broken it down a little bit more. This is the retainer, this is psychological evaluation cost. Right now, in California, as we speak in 2022, psychological evaluation vary between $10,000 to $20,000. Going to a hearing and a trial could be easily $25,000 to $50,000 and go as far as $100,000 or more to get involved in a very complex custody case, especially if she is asking to move away with the child to San Francisco from New York.
That's if we win. If we go to appeal, it'll cost you more.
So he's already preparing for appeal, which is, for full disclosure, fine. However, in a custody case, appeal is really not a good idea, because in custody case, by the time the Court of Appeal will hear this case, 2 years will pass, and the custody is already established. So it's really not relevant to even say that.
I understand.
Now, how old is the child again?
My son is 7.
It's tough.
Why?
Well, in most cases involving a child that young, the court tends to side with the mother.
And that's not necessarily true right now. perhaps it was in 1979.
But she signed over custody.
I'm not saying we don't have a shot, but it won't be easy.
So his lawyer is correct. He is, regardless whether he's legally correct, but he's setting up expectation, and that's what I do. Under promise, over deliver. I would avoid promising the client, we will win this case, you will get full custody, she's not going to see her child ever again. That's BS. It's not going to happen. And I would rather set it up where the client is going to the hearing expecting the worst and getting somewhere in between than expecting the best and then blaming me for promising something and I never promise, because it's just not in my control. At the end of the day, the judge decides. Our job is to do 100% to present it to the judge, the facts, the way to help the judge to make the best decision.
Mr. Kramer, do me a favor, will you? There's something I find very useful in matters like this. I sit down and I write out all the pros and cons on an issue. I actually write them down and look at them.
Money, no privacy, so cons and keeping his son with him, and it looks like he's making this selfish list of less money, no privacy, less work, no social life, which is true.
I want you to do that, okay?
And that's one of the reasons why it's also good to have balanced life by letting the other parent be with another parent. So with the child, I have cases where mom wants to have the child 100%, and I'm asking her, well, do you want to date? Do you want to have your social life? Do you want to have at least one weekend for yourself? If you're not thinking about the best interest of your child?
You gotta have that to...
Look, I don't honestly think she'd go to the trouble of suing for custody of the child if she's going to kidnap him.
All right, just wait a minute. Now, I'm not so sure about her mental health.
What do you mean by that?
She told me she was seeing a shrink, a psychiatrist or something.
All right. Seeing a shrink, a psychiatrist, is not a reason to think that she is mentally unstable or mentally sick. So this is the time for the lawyer to advise his client to seek psychological evaluation, not because she's seeing a therapist, but because she was recently admitting to him and was suicidal.
Did you ever see her talk to the walls? No, but I'm just saying.
Did you see her talk to the walls? That's where her parenting ability would be affected if she was mentally sick.
Look, and I'm just saying that you don't have a choice. I have Billy at the boat pond in Central Park Saturday at 10.
So now she has some visitation rights and he's pulling out of his hair what he can to prevent that from happening because he doesn't want her to see his son, their son.
I have to? Yes.
Yes.
Thanks very much.
Keep your answers short, to the point, succinct. Just tell the truth, and be all right.
Just tell the truth and you will be all right. I tell more than just one thing. Tell the truth. When you speak, at the end of your sentence, pause, or before the other counsel. So other counsel asks a question, then pause. It gives me a moment to object and for you to think. And I noticed then, despite that suggestion, clients cut off the opposing counsel before they finish their question and think they know what the question is going to be. Bad idea. Number one, because it doesn't give me time to object. Number two, there is a court reporter who transcribes it and cannot transcribe when two people speak at each other at the same time.
Now, whatever you do, try not to become emotional no matter what the man says to you.
No matter what you do, try not to be emotional. I disagree. Emotions are a very powerful tool to bring a point across. I would say don't be emotional to the point where you cannot speak, but even then, take a break. Ask for a recess. So maybe that's 1979 men not being emotional is a thing, but it's not right. I would say the opposite. If you need to be emotional, be authentic.
Remember, you got to hear a lot of things that may upset you. I don't want you to react.
And you can see she's dressed in a suit, he's dressed in a suit. It's perhaps the time frame that there were in 1979. Right now, I would say a dress or a casually formal dress would be fine.
Oh yay. Persons having business with the Supreme Court, State of New York, special...
So in New York, there is a Supreme Court, and in California, it's a Superior Court, which is different name, but the same.
Term Part 5. Draw nigh and you shall be heard. This court is now in session. Judge Atkins presiding. All rise.
Same procedure here as well in California.
Tell the court how long you were married.
8 years.
And would you describe those years as happy?
Well, it's not really relevant. However, it could go into her state of mind, why she left, and explain to the judge how come she made such a big move by leaving their child for 18 months.
The first 2, yes. But after that, it became increasingly difficult.
Mrs. Kramer, did you hold a job before you were married?
It's technically irrelevant. If I were opposing counsel, I would object, but it could go into, again, her state of mind that she was working before she got married, then she didn't, and her being home state mom put her into a very deep depression because he didn't let her work.
Yes, I did.
And explaining why she left, it's really tough to explain why she left because it's such a drastic move, but I think her lawyer is doing a good job leading to it.
I first got out of Smith. I worked at the New York department of Mademoiselle magazine for several years.
Did you continue to work after you were married?
No, I did not.
And that goes into the motive why she left.
Did you wish to?
Yes. But every time I talked to Ted, to my ex-husband about it...
Technically, he's not yet ex-husband. The movie didn't show that they divorced first. So there is this thing that's called bifurcation status only, where the court determines them to be single and reserves all other issues, custody, division of assets, and everything else for later. So technically, she's married. But in lay language, you can say soon-to-be ex-husband.
He wouldn't listen. He refused to discuss it in any serious way. I remember once he said that I probably couldn't get a job that would pay enough to hire a babysitter.
And it's possibly correct. I mean, to hire a babysitter is really expensive, and perhaps there are daycares that are less expensive. However, considering how stay-at-home moms, some moms affect psychologically, it's not always a bad idea to go to work and at least part-time to get out of the house.
Billy.
Tell me, are you employed at the present time?
Yes, I'm a sportswear designer for Selco here in New York.
And what is your present salary?
I make $31,000 a year.
Mrs. Kramer, do you love your child?
I mean, it's more a rhetorical question. Of course, she loves her child because she's coming here to ask for custody.
Yes, I do. Very much.
And yet you chose to leave it.
Yes.
And now she's going to explain why. And I'm surprised that I'm surprised that the other side is not bringing her psychological state of mind.
Kramer's therapist, Dr. Freie.
So submitting her therapist transcript is implying that she is waiving her confidentiality between the therapist and herself. Therapist couldn't waive it, she can. And if opposing counsel wanted to bring this report, they couldn't because of confidentiality.
Objection, Your Honor. The report is irrelevant and immaterial.
It is relevant and material, especially if the therapist report is in its conclusion stating that she is doing well, she's mentally recovering from whatever she has been through.
I know I left my son. I know that that's a terrible thing to do. Believe me, I have to live with that every day of my life.
And her response shows that she is very reflective of herself. She doesn't appear to be insane, where she denies or makes up excuses. She's very aware of her condition, and it seems that she's doing much better now.
In all that time, did your husband ever strike you or physically abuse you in any way?
No.
Just because he didn't beat her up is not implying that she has not had other issues within a relationship.
Did he ever strike or physically abuse his child?
No.
Would you describe your husband as an alcoholic?
No.
A heavy drinker?
Basically, he's saying you had no right to leave unless he would beat you up, beat your child, or would be an alcoholic, which is not necessarily true. Or
was he unfaithful?
No.
Did he ever fail to provide for you in any way?
No.
And California is a no-fault state, meaning she didn't have to fault him in order to leave. It's enough to say irreconcilable differences. So he's leading to, well, you had no reason to leave, therefore you shouldn't get any rights to the child, which has nothing to do with one another.
How many boyfriends have you had permanently? Objection.
Again, this is inappropriate question. It's irrelevant her personal life unless she's dating a criminal.
Your Honor, on the grounds of vagueness, I'll allow it.
And even if she did a criminal, it has to have some impact on her ability to parent or affect the child.
I don't recall.
Well, more than 3, less than 33 permanently? Objection. Overruled. The witness will answer, please.
And when her lawyer says objection, I'm missing the reason for objection. Irrelevant or against public policy or confrontational, something along these lines. And I don't hear that perhaps in 1979. That wasn't expected.
That you've never really done anything in your life that was continuing and stable or could be regarded as correct.
He's very confrontational, so now he's arguing with her and attempting to make her feel inadequate in her responses. I mean, who knows whether or not she's going to stay with a romantic partner for permanent amount of time? We don't know. I mean, that's inherently correct.
Objection. I must request the counsel be prevented from harassing the witness.
Good.
I'll put it another way, counsel. What was the law?
And he's getting way too close to her, pointing finger at her, and you see how her husband picked the same type of lawyer he is himself, pointing finger and being disrespectful and bullying.
Longest personal relationship in your life outside of your parents or girlfriends?
I suppose that would be with my child.
Whom you've seen twice in a year. Mrs. Kramer, your ex-husband. Wasn't he the longest personal relationship in your life?
So what? It's a custody proceeding. It doesn't matter.